Get ready, you guys. This baby is going to open a whole new dimension in television pleasure.
Oh, boy!
I'm so surprised that TerrorVision has withstood this time. It's not that I didn't think it was a good movie or a good script. I thought it was really funny. I liked it, but I just didn't think other people would get it.
People of Earth, you must heed my warning. Destroy your satellite receivers.
TerrorVision was bizarre on top of bizarre on top of bizarre.
Either you were like kind of the college kind of stoner audience and you went in and you were like, oh, this is weird and funny, or you were like, what the hell is this? Come on, honey, let's walk out.
Man, this is the dumbest movie I ever saw.
What a bunch of crud.
With the exception of, obviously, the Lovecraft films I've done and Pit and the Pendulum with Stuart Gordon, I'm guilty of being the creator of all these ideas and these titles. Sometimes it starts with a title. I mean, I love that title. Sometimes I'll have a title laying around for years that I think, God, this would be an awesome title. I have no clue what the story is. And then eventually you graft in things. And I usually develop it to a point where there's a thin storyline, there's a premise.
Back in the days of Empire Pictures, the movies were determined by the poster that Charlie felt like he could sell. And so when I told him I wanted to direct a film, he said, oh, okay, I got a piece of art here for you. Held up this poster of a big, goofy monster coming out of a satellite dish. And he had all of this stuff kind of predetermined how he was going to sell the movie.
I went to Ted Nicolaou, who started with me as an editor on Tourist Trap and did other films and a lot of editing for me in the old days. And you know, Ted has this crazy spin on things where I knew it was going to become quite comedic, you know, which has its pros and cons.
And he went along with it, to his credit, you know, because really he's not that, he likes straight ahead horror. But that was the beginning, was this poster, me saying, let's make it a comedy. And then they let me write the script and we were off and running. For me, that was like a very satirical idea about television and about society at the time. And so I kind of went, okay, if we're going to kill the family, we can't like them too much. So let's make them less sympathetic. And let's say they're like all of the stereotypes of kind of the worst qualities of people in Los Angeles of the 80s. And so swinging was really big in the Valley in those days, and new wave music was really big, and little rock and roll teenagers, and heavy metal was really big, and survivalists were in the news a lot and kind of out in public. So I kind of blended all of that into this idea of the monster coming through the TV set.
This is music. Music. It's almost as important as food.
Because I was a young, innocent teen that was vulnerable, I got a lot of victim roles and girls that were, you know, helpless. So it was hard for me to be considered comedic at the time. So when I did Better Off Dead and TerrorVision, Bill and Ted's, that was a great moment for me in my career because I was able to play comedic roles and get the chance to, you know, stretch my wings and be able to be seen as comedic.
We read Belinda Carlisle for that role, and she would have been really fun to work with. But when Diane came in, she just had so much of the Susie kind of Valley girl thing, and she was so cute and yet could be so kind of like tempestuous and kind of like hard for a parent to deal with. And so when I met her, she had the role.
Totally awesome!
Getting this part was a dream. To be able to play someone who looked so 80s, Cyndi Lauper-esque, 3 wigs and the leather vest and the tutu. I mean, just outrageous. But the personality and the voice was Valley Girl.
Gramps, that is totally sicko!
you know, gross and oh my gosh, and just really like, I mean, it was such a character.
Forget Mom and Dad. We don't have to share anything with them.
I didn't know how it was going to come off in the end. I just knew that I enjoyed it. I enjoyed playing the character, and I enjoyed the aspect of, you know, being able to play a punk rocker at a time when, you know, Cyndi Lauper and punk was in.
Clove, this is Sherman again. There's really a monster. It's eating Mom and Dad. Please help me.
I started acting when I was 5, so I'd been acting for, you know, 5 or 6 years at that point. But I had never done a feature film. I had done a lot of television and guest starring roles, and I was really sinking my teeth into very dramatic roles at the time. I think at that point I'd already been hired to play the recurring character Tommy Westfall on St. Elsewhere. That was my first television series, but I'd never done a feature.
For Chad Allen, he came in and was such the straight man for all of the craziness going on around him, and was so cute and so ready to take on this role with just a bunch of insanity.
Chad was adorable. He was really great. Very professional, worked, you know, 1 billion hours, never complained. He was like an adult.
This is a very weird movie. Sherman Putterman was a very strange character. The things that I remember about him is that he was obsessed with the military. And so I got to run around the movie dressed in full camouflage and, you know, carrying an M16. I think the character was like, actually this, as I recall, a kind of sweet kid in this really bizarre world, you know, that they created around me. It was fun for me, you know. The thing I always loved about acting the most was that, especially as a kid, was that I got to do things that no kid ever got to do. Shoot guns, throw hand grenades, break things. It was awesome.
Voila! Chez Putterman.
Raquel Putterman is supposedly a mother and a swinger. But she was like modern, but still in the 50s, so she was insane.
I had been running into Mary Woronov. I was really aware of her and how cool she was, and eating Raoul I really liked. And so we called her in to talk about the role of Medusa. And she walked in and said, you know, she had read the script, and she said, you know, this role, Medusa, I could play this, but that's what most people would call me in for. The role I would really like to play is the mother. And Mary asking to play that role was like, oh, okay, that'll be incredible. And so for me, it was like, okay, yeah, you've got the role of the mother.
Now, go on. Have fun.
The thing about being, you know, pleasant and wonderful, oh yes, of course, my husband can go over there and do what he likes. And, you know, the children, what are children? Oh yes, right, children. They can do what they like. She's a nice person. She's completely self-centered. She's completely obsessed with her body. She's completely just non-compass as far as real facts go.
Stanley, I'm right in the middle of my program! For Christ's sake, Stanley!
Lay off me, beautiful. I almost got this baby wired.
Probably the first person that came to us was Garrett Graham as the dad. We looked at Harry Shearer and he wasn't interested, and there were a lot of people that we wanted that weren't available or weren't interested in the project, but Garrett got it, and so Garrett came aboard.
Are we gonna swing or what?
Garrett was my husband, and Garrett's totally familiar with camp, and Garrett was fabulous foil with me. He was, if anything, more camp than me, which was shocking. So paired together, it was going to be great.
Garrett was very professional, very fun. I never felt like I was working with Garrett, meaning I never felt it was work. He's just natural.
What the hell did that homo do to the jacuzzi?
He just took control of his character and was really fun.
I'll get it. It's OD.
Oh, who?
OD, my new boyfriend.
Kiss the boot. At that time, I'd had a little bit of success. I'd just done Real Genius, and it hadn't come out yet. It was about to come out. And a lot of people were buzzing about it. And, you know, of course, everybody had this idea that it was going to become this big blockbuster film. And then I had just met with Peter Hyams to do Running Scared, which I did directly after TerrorVision. And he was like, just go do whatever you're gonna do. You're gonna do this movie. I gotta jump through some hoops, but you're gonna be in it. And so I kind of was like, do I really want to go do this like low-budget, campy horror film?
Jon Gries came in, and you know, he was a little bit older than a teenager at that point, but he was so damn funny playing that role. He was just automatically in the minute he read. You know, sometimes you just see somebody and they are perfect.
The first audition, and I had the wig on, and I went in with no shirt on. And like everybody was trying to do crazy things, but I just went in there almost naked. You know, I was like, whatever, you know. And that was, I think, considered kind of crazy at the time.
He was like the coolest character in the whole movie, and he was a really cool guy. I remember watching him a lot when he was doing his scenes, probably because his character was so cool and interesting, and you know, to my 10-year-old brain, it was just like, oh, you know. He was kind of like a big brother to me, and I came from a family with all like big brothers and stuff, so I just remember feeling really close to him.
Just some of the lines, like when we did that scene where we were getting the food, we were trying to teach the monster how to speak, and he's like,
I'm O.D. O.D.
It was so adorable and so funny, and I felt like we made a really cute couple.
Shut up, butthole!
O.D. had to die. He would have gone bald, and he would have been the same dude, but just like with none of the you know, those like lofty accoutrements. He would have just been, you know, he would have been a shell of his former self. He was better to die young.
Belly down, soldier, the geeks aren't through with you yet. Bam, bam, bam!
For the role of Grandpa, we read a lot of older leading men of Hollywood. We read Donald O'Connor from Singing in the Rain. We brought in all these incredible actors who were looking for work at that time of their life. But when Burt Remsen walked into the room, he had that kind of wacky military. He'd played a lot of cowboys and army guys, and he just got the role because the role required a guy who was like kind of a cantankerous old guy.
And I think most of my scenes were with him until he gets taken out in the film. And he was this great grandfatherly character actor who was so fun to be with. So we put on our costumes, our military costumes, our grenades and guns, and loaded up, and we just had fun together.
All right, boy, let's go recon the house.
So with him, the family was like this incredible unit of very eccentric characters, and it was perfect for the film.
I have a warrant here for the arrest of Sherman Putterman.
Huh?
I can't remember exactly when I met Ted, but I guess I was just brought in maybe because he had seen Reanimator. So I just read for him, and this was going to be shot in Rome, so I was thrilled. My first of 3 films over there for Empire.
Hello, bloodsuckers.
For the role of Medusa, Jennifer Richards came in, and she had the bosom that was like, okay, I mean, forget the face. You're Medusa, you turn men to stone, you get them hard immediately, you know, so she was so funny.
What is this movie? I think I read for a part in it one time.
Randy Brooks, same thing. She came in with that voice and that kind of vacant-headed kind of act that she could do, and she had the body that was just like perfect for Cherry, the swinger wife that Garrett Graham was gonna lust after and ultimately not get.
Holy tomatoes.
And then the weirdest casting coup of them all was Alejandro Rey.
Spiro Exitos is the manliest of men.
Alejandro Rey was the camp version of an Italian, perfect for the movie. And if I had anything to do with him, it was with a sort of look of, oh.
And he just had those teeth and the perfect kind of elegant, aristocratic look. So really, for my first film, it was a cast that I was super lucky.
Everybody who was in that movie knew we had to push it to the cartoony level. Was that done at the time? I don't think so. I don't think acting was as knowledgeably over the top.
There were days, though, that I thought, Ted, I'm really concerned that I'm going way over the top on this. I'm concerned that this is going to be too far, too much. He's like going, no, trust me. trust me.
Ted created an environment where we got to just let loose and go crazy. I don't remember anything about TerrorVision except that it was like a playground for me.
Ted is not someone, you know, who's the director up here and then you're the little actress. No, 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 we're all a family. And I like that.
I got to give him a lot of credit for having the guts to come to Italy and make this movie that was his baby. It must have been really hard because you have an Italian crew, not everybody speaks English, and here's Ted trying to make this all work.
Really, the Italians, because they respect the director so much, you're not getting any kind of sarcasm or backtalk from anybody. They're trying their very best to understand what you want and give it to you, you know. So really, the only wolves you're getting thrown to are the wolves of money and schedule. Back in those days, it was, you know, Charlie had money to spend on the movies and was aspiring to a certain level for theatrical release.
So the challenges in making TerrorVision were, of course, trying to find a happy medium between Ted's sort of vision, which was totally unaffordable, and what we could afford, because we really wanted a fantasy set that really didn't exist anywhere. So that meant everything had to be built from scratch. We had a great art director in all these movies, a guy named Jon Gries. So he, I think, delivered a very unique, almost semi-pornographic set, if you will.
Because the Italians kind of brought their own kind of wacky sensibility to it, it kind of took what I had written and what I imagined and gave it this even more garish, kind of rococo kind of feeling, you know. And Giovanni Nattalucci came to the United States and we toured houses and looked at porn magazines and saw swingers places and really got a sense of what it would be.
The set design, when I first saw it, I went, I want that. I want that decor.
I felt first I would feel like I was in a mausoleum, and then I thought I was in, you know, some kind of nightmare movie, and that, which I was. Statues would appear from nowhere. Ivy all of a sudden was hanging in your face. It was really ridiculous.
I think this became an operatic Italian version of American culture.
You know, oh, it's a 50s style, so it must be very pure. And suddenly you see this statue of a naked woman or a painting on the wall, and you go, wait a minute, what's going on here? So I think it keeps the audience off balance, and it keeps it fun, and there's bright colors, and so the style of it, I think it's classic 80s.
My parents were very Catholic, very Italian, and, you know, so they were always concerned, and they were concerned about TerrorVision. But somehow I think the opportunity to go to Italy somehow overrode their concern.
They came on the set and saw that erotic, crazy art on the wall and just said, you know, could you just not frame Chad against any of that art, you know?
This is grungy!
To some degree, they isolated my personal experience from, like, understanding what was going on in that room with the bed and everybody in bed together and the artwork and all that. But I do remember, like, wandering around the set and seeing that artwork, you know, in sets that weren't being used and being, like, kind of fascinated by it and intrigued and, you know, like, what is a swinger? What's going on? What's going on, you know?
When it came time to start designing the creature, Jon Buechler was tied in with Charlie as his creature effects guy. Jon was also directing and prepping his movie Troll, which shot on the soundstage next to ours, like in the weeks before we started shooting.
Shooting Troll first, editing Troll at night, and shooting TerrorVision during the daytime was one of the larger challenges of my life.
Jon's creatures always looked like him, you know, in the face. And so I was determined that our creature was not going to look like Jon Buechler. So we basically argued a lot about that creature because I wanted something that had no symmetrical facial qualities, that was goofy and scary at the same time, that had a mouth too big, one big eye, one small eye.
The biggest direction Ted ever gave us was make it look really stupid.
And it was so against the grain of what Jon had done up to that point, or even envisioned for the character, that he was kind of mad at me through the design process.
Back in the day, all these creatures and monsters in all these early Empire movies were created in LA, designed, developed, and then ship at absurd expense, because always last minute, you know, nothing happened like you would like it, like, oh, we'll ship it, you know, by sea, you know, 6 weeks in advance. No, it was ready on a Thursday and it shot Monday, so you had to get a gargantuan box on a plane virtually overnight.
Now, we had fabricated a lot of the elements of the monster, and we had like a week and a half from my wrap of Troll to the beginning of TerrorVision to actually push the monster out onto the set and make it start working.
The monster had been basically created, but then we had extra stuff to do, tentacles and mounting the heads on them, and just extra stuff that had to get done. So I was kind of like doing that while while Troll was still shooting. We did this tongue that came out of it, which was basically somebody's arm and a big flat rubber thing that slapped around a lot.
And we also had to create this alien named Pluthar.
People of Earth, please heed my warning.
It was classic Saturday morning alien versus the stupidest looking creature on the face of the planet.
The special effects artists sort of bring the monster together, and it was always in pieces. It was very rare that the monster was all in one piece, except for a couple of times.
Basically, it's too heavy to be able to move very well, and it was unwieldy as all get out, and we had two people inside trying to operate the mechanisms and somebody else lying down operating something else, and you had to slather it with lubricant every time you saw it, so it would be dripping, and it was a big mess and left stains on the carpet everywhere it went, like a big bad pet.
That's one of the strong memories that I have, that every time we had a take of something, it was like we had to slime the monster, more slime, more slime, more slime.
You have to imagine what this monster is going to be, and I was expecting something a little more realistic. I get there, I'm like, really? This is the thing that's going to eat me? Okay.
It wasn't a mean monster. They let it have dinner. They treated it like a dog. Everything was great. It ate their parents. What more pleasure could you have?
That was great to act with. I mean, I was so fortunate to be in an era where I could still act with something that was real.
Oh, wow, he's cute.
There's something magical about a real creature, critter, doll, monster that is literally there in the environment, lit like the actors are lit, that the actors can react to, as opposed to CGI, which at the end of the day, no matter how well it's done, to me feels more like a cartoon.
By and large, what makes it work was that Ted really had an idea on how to make it work. There's never a shot of the Hungry Beast where there aren't 3 or 4 elements all moving at the same time, just to keep it busy and operating and silly.
For me, it's like one of the great kind of Jon Buechler creations. You know, it just looks like a big booger or a big turd, but like with personality. To me, that's what I wanted, was this creature that would be funny and lovable and completely odd looking.
TerrorVision and Troll were shot back to back at the old De Laurentiis studios in Rome before it became Empire Studios. I think we were sort of the test run to see if the studio would work for Empire. And
there were those little places I'd walk around the stage and I'd think, I'm almost certain this is where Jack Palance was walking by in Contempt. I'm like, this has got to be the place. When Brigitte Bardot was standing right here, and I'd be like rubbing on the floor like a dog, you know.
In those days, we sort of called it the post-Holocaust studio because it was this tumble-down, broken place where I think when Dino fled the country, he ripped out all the plumbing and all the wiring and all the air conditioning.
I guess the most difficult things were dealing with the heat, because it was summertime in Rome. There was no air conditioning on this sound stage, and it was brutally hot every day.
Rome is deserted in August because it's so hot. No one wants to stay there. So here you are acting in all this garb in the studio with all the equipment, with all the lights, and you're just waiting for that moment where you know, get that break and you're just fanning yourself off.
They actually had to bring around this massive air conditioner with a hose and blow it on the actors, otherwise they'd die. It was insane.
Look, I come from Corman. Low budget to me means that no one's going to tell me what to do because they don't have time. They have to do everything else. So nobody was paying attention to me. And then I can do what I like.
You know, movies are like going to war, and you have to prepare yourself for every day's shoot by kind of doing your homework and figuring out your shots and how you're going to stage things. This movie somehow I felt like I was kind of carried along by this crew that really knew what they were doing.
You had a brilliant cinematographer, Romano Albani, who had worked for Fellini at one time.
Didn't speak much English, but was a really good cinematographer and willing to go wherever the movie took us.
Everything was so overdone, and it was beautifully shot, beautifully lit. Charlie's films always just look wonderful.
What's your name?
I think we were in Italy for like 2 months, which was great. And we didn't work every day. We worked, I don't know, I mean, at least my character didn't work every day. But when we did work, we worked long hours.
But we were put up in this great hotel, so, you know, if it was a problem, we had a great vacation. We were by the sea, all the Italians are there.
And we just had, you know, would talk and laugh for, it seemed like hours on our siesta lunch breaks, and it was very not an American way to make a movie, you know.
Yeah, my nickname in Italy, by the way, is Spugna Patana dell'Inferno, which means sponge whore from hell. And I love that name. I earned it. Yeah, because sponge is what they call a guy who drinks a lot, which I did.
Every night it would be the cast that was there staying at the hotel with us. We'd sit at a big table and eat dinner and drink wine, and the piano player would play New York, New York about 100 times in a night. And it was like, I thought my life was going to be, it was like one of the great times of my life, and I didn't realize it at the time, you know.
Don't ever listen to that kind of music. It rots your brain. Now this is my band. I wrote this song.
When the movie was locked, we started looking for a composer for it. And at that time I had been listening to the Cramps, and I invited in Lux Interior to watch the film. But he was about to go on tour with another band at the time, so he couldn't do it. We called Frank Zappa, and I screened it for Frank Zappa one evening. And I just wonder what would have been the movie if Frank Zappa had done the score. It would have been awesome, you know. But the schedule was just not good for him. He couldn't really see doing it in the kind of time. We had a theatrical release date, and so he couldn't do it. And Richard Band, you know, was Charlie's brother and really did the music for so many of Charlie's films in that time. And we didn't go to him first because we were looking for that kind of kookier, more rock and roll edge. But we ended up going to Richard and saying, Richard, can you do something?
Well, the challenges on TerrorVision is how kooky could I get and how kooky could I think? I mean, it was kooky. Again, on TerrorVision, I worked with my friend Christopher Stone on the electronics. There weren't that many real challenges on it because it was really, you know, as far out and silly and kooky as you could think is sort of where you went and what it called for. It was definitely fun, though.
I was a little bit, at the time, not that pleased with the way the music kind of tried to make the film funny, whereas if the music kind of stood back from the comedy, I think the comedy might have played a little bit better. But it is what it is now, and you know, I think his music does the film good. At the same time, I also was seeing a band called the Fibonacci's play a lot. I got it in my head that their style, which was kind of B-52s but was even quirkier, would be great for the main title song of the film. So we were very lucky that they did it, because I think that song kind of sets the movie in the right path from the very beginning. At the time that TerrorVision was released, Charlie was in the process of trying to release 3 movies like back to back in theaters. Because he didn't have a decent marketing budget, by the time it got to TerrorVision, there was no money left for anything. The audience that I thought was going to discover it didn't have a chance to discover it. Also, the Challenger exploded like the week of the release of TerrorVision. So people were not thinking of space as a real yuck fest at the time.
I actually remember seeing the film. I remember thinking, I love this film, and I don't think people are going to get it, and I don't even want to have to explain myself here.
It's a weird movie. I mean, either you're into it or you're not. I mean, we had people telling us back in the day, this sucks. You shouldn't even release this thing. It's awful.
it was critically reviled because it was unlike anything people were used to seeing at the time. I was so upset that my little baby was like getting all these horrible reviews, and it just sent me into a tailspin for a while.
I thought TerrorVision was one of the funniest movies ever made. It was just so silly and so stupid. I think its sensibilities back then were way ahead of its time.
It was just so offbeat. But this was the 80s, and there was crazy stuff in the 80s. Anything went, and that's why I loved that was the greatest decade on earth.
If nothing else, a lot of the films I've made, I think, are unique. To just be in a position where I can point to a bunch of movies that have, for better or worse, have not been the kind of new ideas, you know, in a genre that has 1 billion look-alike films.
As an actress, I think I've always wound up being in films that were kind of cult films. They may not have been huge hits when they came out, but word of mouth made them so.
And it was nothing if not unique. I've never seen anything like TerrorVision ever. If it's gained a certain kind of popularity or has a certain reputation that's lived on, it must be just because it's a unique piece of art. I mean, it's freaking weird.
What has been really satisfying is that over the years, I find more and more people that saw it, that loved it, and that turned their friends onto it. And it's kind of grown in its reputation.
It's coming around, and I think that it is a punk classic because I've had people ask me for it and ask me about it.
That's when I first understood that it was becoming popular. When I went to a horror convention, person after person goes, "Oh, where are your TerrorVision pictures?" And I thought, how do you even know about this movie?
And I think the difficulty of even finding a copy of it over the years kind of made it more of like a forbidden fruit kind of a film that you can't get unless you know somebody who has an old copy of it.
I believe that the reason TerrorVision has found an audience and has a very strong following is because it is so silly and off the wall, but at the same time, it has the production value of a major motion picture.
These are movies that if they're clever, and Ted's movies are very clever, they seem to last forever. They have a very long shelf life. So here it is, 25, 30 years later, people are talking about TerrorVision. Later on, we made a movie called Bad Channels. These are just strange little confections that Ted whips up that really stand the test of time.
It's a gift. It's a great gift to be able to have this movie out and people being able to pass it on and enjoy it.
I'm so happy that after the drubbing I got when it first got released, that over the years I've seen little clutches of young people that get it and that turn their friends onto it and watch it a lot and love the humor of it. And so it's become really satisfying to me that something that is that old kind of continues to appeal to certain kinds of people.
This is music. Music. It's almost as important as food.